First Contact's finest. Commander Sarah Chen stood at perfect attention before the Galactic Concordat's high command. Her weathered Force Recon dress uniform a stark contrast to the shimmering biosynthetic suits of the alien leadership. The massive chamber, with its swirling holographic displays and crystalline architecture, seemed designed to make visitors feel small. She refused to be intimidated. So, this is Earth's finest warrior. Supreme Commander Vaxthra's translator rendered their clicks and whistles into English with an unmistakable tone of condescension. The towering arthropoid's compound eyes studied Chen like a curious specimen. Your species hasn't even mastered gravity manipulation, yet you dare petition to join our military alliance. Chen maintained her composure, though her jaw tightened slightly. With respect, Supreme Commander, humanity's history suggests that mastering adversity is more valuable than mastering technology. A ripple of what might have been laughter moved through the assembled alien leadership. The Concordat's military council chamber held representatives from 24 spacefaring species, each more technologically advanced than humanity. Their derision was palpable. Fascinating perspective, drawled Ambassador Khalef, their gelatinous form shifting through various shades of azure. Perhaps you could demonstrate these primitive virtues. Our databanks show your species still relies on projectile weapons and physical combat training. Gladly, Chen replied, her dark eyes steady. Though I should warn you, the last species that called us primitive didn't enjoy the demonstration. Before Khalef could respond, emergency alerts blazed through the chamber. Holographic displays erupted with damage reports as the station's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Supreme Commander Vaxthra's mandibles clicked in alarm. Impossible. The station's quantum core is destabilizing. All emergency systems are offline. Chen's training kicked in instantly. While the alien leadership frantically accessed their neural interfaces, she was already moving. Permission to assist, Supreme Commander. This is hardly the time for, Vaxthra began, but Chen was already accessing the nearest terminal. Your systems are designed for efficiency, not adaptability, she explained, fingers flying across the holographic interface. On Earth, we learn to operate complex systems even when they're damaged. Your quantum core isn't failing. It's being attacked by a virus that exploits its perfect efficiency. The alien leaders watched in disbelief as Chen bypassed the automated systems, manually rerouting power through secondary channels. It wasn't elegant, but it was effective. The gravity stabilized. Impossible, whispered Khalef. The core's safeguards are absolute. Absolute systems have absolute weaknesses, Chen replied, still working. Humans learned to think around corners because we had to. Your virus writer knew your systems would try to optimize their way out of the problem. So I did something inefficient instead. Warning klaxons suddenly blared. Security feeds showed armed intruders materializing throughout the station. Their armor bore the insignia of the Nexus Separatists, a radical faction opposed to expanding the Concordat. A diversion, Vaxthra realized. The core attack was merely to occupy our security forces. Chen was already moving toward the chamber's weapon locker. Supreme Commander, request permission to demonstrate those primitive virtues now. The arthropoid commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been resignation. Granted, Commander Chen. Though what do you expect to accomplish against quantum-phased armor with primitive tactics? Chen checked the charge on a Concordat pulse rifle, quickly familiarizing herself with its controls. The same thing humanity's accomplished since we first picked up stones to hunt bigger predators. We adapt. The chamber's doors burst inward as the first wave of separatists attacked. They clearly expected to find cowering bureaucrats. Instead, they found a human force recon commander who had spent her career preparing for exactly this kind of scenario. Chen's first shots caught them completely by surprise. She'd already noticed their quantum-phased armor had a slight lag when changing states, a weakness their superior technology had left them blind to. 3 precise bursts timed to those microsecond vulnerabilities dropped the lead attackers. Impossible. One of the separatists shouted. Her weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our defenses. You relied on your technology, Chen replied, vaulting over a fallen column for better cover. I relied on observation and timing. Guess which one adapted faster? What followed was a masterclass in human combat doctrine. Chen used the environment, improvised weapons, and unpredictable tactics to systematically dismantle the separatist assault team. When they tried to phase through walls, she predicted their emergence points based on power fluctuations. When they deployed automated combat drones, she turned the machine's perfect targeting algorithms against each other. The alien leadership watched in stunned silence as Chen neutralized threats their most advanced security systems had deemed unstoppable. She didn't just fight, she adapted, improvised, and overcame, displaying a creativity their highly optimized training programs had never considered. The last separatist fell just as Concordat security forces finally arrived. Chen saved her weapon and resumed her position before the High Command, now standing amid unconscious attackers and disabled combat drones. Besides some scuff marks on her uniform, she looked exactly as she had when the meeting began. I believe, she said calmly, we were discussing humanity's qualifications to join your military alliance. Supreme Commander Vaxtra's compound eyes studied the aftermath of Chen's demonstration with new appreciation. Indeed we were, Commander. Though I believe the nature of that discussion has changed significantly. A most illuminating demonstration, Ambassador Kaleth admitted, their gelatinous form now a thoughtful shade of green. Though I must ask, how did you achieve this without neural combat interfaces or tactical enhancement implants? Simple, Chen replied. We humans learned long ago that the most powerful weapon isn't the most advanced technology. It's the ability to adapt when that technology fails. Every human child learns this the first time they have to solve a problem with the tools at hand rather than the tools they wish they had. Vaxtra's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. And this is common among your species. This creative combat approach. Supreme Commander, what you just witnessed was a basic application of human military doctrine. We have entire special operations teams who make what I just did look like a casual workout. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity might lack the Concordat's advanced technology, but they had something potentially more valuable. The ability to think around corners, to find solutions where none should exist, to turn limitations into advantages. Well then, Vaxtra announced, I believe it's time we discussed a significant revision to humanity's role in the Concordat, perhaps starting with a joint training program. I suspect both sides have much to learn from each other. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Supreme Commander, I believe that's the most intelligent suggestion I've heard since arriving on this station. As cleanup crews began removing the disabled separatists, Chen could see the alien leadership already reassessing their views on primitive species. Sometimes the best way to advance wasn't to develop better technology, but to better understand how to use what you already had. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy some very old lessons about very new problems, and Sarah Chen had a feeling this was just the beginning. Trial by fire. The Concordat Military Academy's quantum blast spires stretched impossibly high into Centauri Prime's purple sky. Commander Sarah Chen watched the alien cadets practicing formation maneuvers with their neural-linked combat suits, each movement precise, programmed, and perfectly predictable. Impressive, isn't it? Lieutenant Kavol, her newly assigned liaison, rippled their crystalline form in what Chen had learned was pride. The finest military training facility in 7 sectors. Though I imagine it must seem quite advanced compared to your Earth academies. Chen thought of Paris Island's mud pits and smiled. Advanced isn't always better, Lieutenant. Sometimes the hard way is the right way. An interesting philosophy, Kavol chimed. Though I fail to see how primitive physical training could possibly. The Academy's warning systems exploded to life, cutting off Kavol's critique. Emergency force fields sparked and died. Neural networks crashed, and throughout the sprawling complex, Thousands of cadets suddenly found their combat suits frozen, trapping them in mid-motion. Multiple breaches detected. The AI announced calmly, "Separatist forces have compromised all primary systems. Emergency protocols offline. Neural interface network compromised. Have a pleasant day." Chen was already moving. "Cavil, how many cadets are trapped in those suits?" The crystalline officer's surface clouded with distress. "Over 3,000. Without neural links, they're completely immobilized. They've never trained without the suit's assistance. Time to learn the hard way then." Chen accessed her comm unit. Pure radio waves. Too primitive for the Separatists to bother jamming. "This is Commander Chen. Any Earth personnel on campus, combat positions. We've got 3,000 cadets who need a crash course in doing things the human way." Across the academy, 24 human exchange officers and drill instructors acknowledge. None asked for clarification. They'd all trained for worst-case scenarios, even if their alien counterparts considered such preparation primitive. "Cavil, I need you to broadcast on emergency frequencies. Tell the cadets to do exactly what the humans say, no matter how illogical it seems. But, Commander, without their neural interfaces, without their combat protocols, they'll have to think for themselves." Chen finished. "Sometimes the best technology is the one between your ears." The first Separatist strike team breached the main training hall, expecting easy targets. Instead, they found Chen had already organized the trapped cadets into makeshift barriers, using their locked suits as cover. Basic tactics, taught to every human recruit. "This is undignified," protested a young Thoraxian cadet, their mandibles clicking in distress. "Dignity doesn't stop plasma bolts," Chen replied, demonstrating how to brace a rifle without neural assistance. "Right now, we're all primitive warriors together." The Separatists pressed their attack, clearly expecting the Academy's advanced defenses to be their greatest obstacle. They weren't prepared for human combat instructors who specialized in teaching adaptability over automation. In the zero-gravity chambers, Gunnery Sergeant Martinez taught Aquilian cadets how to use their locked suits as reaction mass, turning immobility into an advantage. Down in the quantum engineering labs, Lieutenant Harper showed energy-form beings how to manipulate bare wires and crystal matrices without neural interfaces, crafting crude but effective countermeasures. "Impossible," Cavil whispered, watching Chen coordinate the defense. "These tactics shouldn't work. They're completely contrary to established combat doctrine." "That's exactly why they do work," Chen explained, helping the silicon-based cadet aim manually. "Your enemy's prepared for your doctrine, not ours." Sometimes the greatest advantage is being underestimated. The Separatists had expected to find helpless cadets trapped in deactivated combat suits. Instead, they found themselves facing an improvised defense force learning human combat techniques at an astonishing rate. The very limitations they tried to exploit became advantages in unexpected ways. Locked combat suits became portable cover. Disabled neural interfaces forced cadets to think independently rather than rely on combat programs. Even the Academy's advanced architecture, temporarily stripped of its quantum fields, provided natural choke points that any human defender could recognize. "They're adapting," Cavil observed with growing wonder. "Without protocols, without programming. They're learning." Chen nodded, pride evident as she watched alien cadets applying human combat basics with increasing skill. "That's what humans do best. We adapt, and we teach others to adapt. Your technology makes you strong, but flexibility makes you stronger." The tide turned when the cadets started innovating on their own, combining human techniques with their natural abilities. Crystalline beings used their forms to reflect targeting lasers. Energy entities learned to temporarily possess disabled systems. Even the trapped combat suits became weapons as cadets learned to use their lock joints as improvised battering rams. The Separatist forces, expecting to exploit the Academy's reliance on technology, found themselves outmaneuvered by the very primitiveness they'd hoped to capitalize on. One by one, their strike teams fell to increasingly creative counterattacks. When Concordat reinforcements finally arrived, they found the Academy secured and the Separatist forces thoroughly defeated. More importantly, they found thousands of cadets forever changed by the experience. "I never knew combat could be so intuitive," one of the Silicon cadets admitted, carefully field stripping a rifle the human way. "Our neural programs have 1,000 combat solutions, but they never taught us to think of new ones." That's the difference between training and education, Chen explained. Training tells you what to do. Education teaches you how to figure things out for yourself. Kvol's crystalline form had taken on a new pattern, one that seemed to reflect deep thought. "Commander, I believe I owe you an apology. I called your methods primitive, but I'm beginning to understand that simplicity and primitiveness are not the same thing." "No apology needed, Lieutenant. Just help me convince the Academy Board that some of these primitive lessons might be worth adding to the curriculum." After today's demonstration, Kvol chimed softly, "I believe that conversation has already begun. Though I must ask, did you humans really learn all this through trial and error?" Chen smiled, remembering her own training days. Sometimes the errors teach you more than the trials. The key is being willing to learn from both. As systems gradually came back online and neural interfaces reactivated, many cadets chose to leave their combat suits powered down. They'd learned something more valuable than perfect programming. They'd learned to trust their own capabilities. The Separatists had tried to teach the Concordat a lesson about over-reliance on technology. Instead, they'd helped humanity teach a much more important lesson about the power of adaptability, creativity, and good old-fashioned human ingenuity. And in the Academy's halls, 3,000 cadets began spreading a new kind of doctrine, one that would eventually reshape the Concordat's entire approach to military training. Sometimes the best way forward was to take a step back and remember that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal was the ability to think beyond its limitations. The hunt. Deep in the Nix Nebula's magnetic storms, where quantum sensors went blind and neural interfaces dissolved into static, Commander Sarah Chen led her unlikely strike team through the wreckage of an ancient space station. The mission was simple on paper: track down the Separatist leadership before they could launch another attack. The reality, as usual, was far more complicated. "This is barbaric," muttered Sergeant Vex, their crystalline form dulled by the nebula's interference. "No sensors, no neural mapping, no quantum targeting. We might as well be blindfolded." "Welcome to human hunting grounds," Chen replied, checking her old-fashioned compass. Some basic technologies still worked in the nebula's chaos. The simpler, the better. When everything else fails, trust your instincts. Her team was a deliberate mix of species and skills. Vex's crystalline resilience, Kvol's adaptive intelligence, 2 energy-form twins named Pulse and Echo, and a massive silicon-based cadet she trained named Canyon. All top graduates of what the Academy now called the Primitive Combat Initiative. "Movement ahead," Canyon rumbled, their crystalline sensors vibrating. Or maybe just magnetic echoes, hard to tell without quantum scanning. "Good instincts," Chen praised. "That uncertainty you're feeling, that's your natural senses trying to tell you something. Listen to them." The team had tracked the Separatist leadership to this ancient station, a relic from before the Concordat's formation. Its twisted corridors and failing systems made it a perfect hiding place for those trying to avoid modern detection methods. "Commander," Kvol chimed softly, "I'm beginning to understand why humans train in such adverse conditions. Without our technology, every shadow becomes a potential threat. And every threat becomes an opportunity," Chen added, studying the station's primitive but functional ventilation system. "Look at this place. They chose it because our advanced tech doesn't work here. But that means their tech doesn't work either." The Separatists had learned from their previous defeats. They'd abandoned their quantum-phased armor and neural combat systems, adapting to the nebula's interference. But they hadn't counted on facing opponents who'd trained specifically for such conditions. Contact. Echo's energy form flickered in warning. Crude projectile fire, Bullets and shrapnel, old tech that still worked in the magnetic storm, ripped through the corridor. Chen's team reacted instantly, using techniques that would have shocked their former instructors. Vex's crystalline form diffracted incoming fire, while Canyon provided mobile cover. The energy twins, unable to use their usual quantum abilities, conducted electricity through the metal floor to shock their attackers. "They're learning," Caval observed, returning fire with a simple projectile weapon, using technology that matches the environment rather than trying to overcome it. "Quick learners," Chen agreed. "But they're still thinking like people used to having technical advantages. Watch their movements. They're staying in defensive formations designed for neural link squads." She was right. The Separatists had adapted their weapons but not their tactics. They still moved with the rigid precision of soldiers accustomed to computer assistance, even when that assistance wasn't available. "Reminds me of my first day of human training," Canyon rumbled, using their massive silicon form to shield the others. "Keep expecting the neural interface to tell you what to do next." Chen led her team through the station's maze-like structure, using the Separatists' own predictability against them. Where they expected sensor sweeps, she used echolocation. When they set up kill zones for advanced weapons, her team flanked through maintenance shafts too primitive to be worth guarding. "They're falling back to the central chamber," Pulse reported, their energy form crackling with borrowed electricity. "But something feels wrong." "Trust that feeling," Chen advised. "Instincts evolved long before technology. Sometimes they notice things sensors can't." The central chamber was vast, its ancient walls lined with unfamiliar technology. The Separatist leaders waited there, surrounded by what looked like hybrid weapons, crude projectile launchers jury-rigged with quantum components. "Impressive adaptation, Commander," their leader, a towering arthropoid, clicked. "Teaching aliens to fight like humans. But we've learned too. Sometimes the old ways and the new can be combined." "Funny thing about combination," Chen replied, noting how her team had automatically spread out to cover all angles. "It works best when you understand both halves." The battle that followed was unlike anything the Concordat had seen before. The Separatists had mastered hybrid technology, but Chen's team had mastered hybrid thinking. Where their enemies tried to force new tech to work in old ways, the strike team flowed between strategies as naturally as breathing. Vex and Canyon coordinated without signals, using crystal resonance to time their movements. The energy twins conducted improvised electronic warfare through the station's primitive power systems. Caval proved that advanced tactical analysis worked just as well without computer assistance. And Chen moved through it all like a force of nature, demonstrating why humans had survived countless disasters without neural interfaces or quantum fields. Every piece of debris became cover, every malfunction became an opportunity, every limitation became a potential advantage. "Impossible," the Separatist leader gasped as their forces crumbled. "We studied human combat records, planned for every primitive tactic." "That's your problem," Chen explained, disarming them with a simple joint lock. "You studied our tactics but not our thinking. Humans don't just use primitive methods. We understand why they work. That's what makes us dangerous." As her team secured the chamber and its valuable intelligence data, Chen noticed something interesting. Her alien squad mates were moving differently now, more fluidly, combining their natural abilities with human adaptability in ways she'd never seen before. "You know," Caval observed, helping catalog the Separatists' hybrid weapons, "I used to think humans were teaching us to fight without technology. But that's not it at all, is it?" "No," Chen agreed. "We're teaching you to fight with everything available, from the most advanced quantum computer to the simplest stone tool. Because someday, you might need both." The mission was a success, but its implications reached far beyond capturing a few Separatist leaders. Chen's team had demonstrated something revolutionary: that the gap between primitive and advanced wasn't a barrier, but a spectrum of possibilities. As they waited for extraction, watching the nebula's magnetic storms paint pictures in the void, Chen reflected on how far they'd come. The Concordat had wanted to teach humanity about advanced warfare. Instead, humanity was teaching the galaxy that true advancement meant never forgetting your roots. "Commander," Canyon rumbled thoughtfully, "do you think we'll ever go back to relying purely on technology?" Chen smiled, remembering her first days as an instructor. "Why would we? We've learned something better: how to rely on ourselves." Breaking point. The captured Separatist data core painted a nightmare in holographic detail above the Concordat War Room's strategic table. Commander Sarah Chen watched the alien leaders' faces, or their species equivalent of faces, as they processed the implications. A genetic targeter. Supreme Commander Vaxfra's mandibles clicked in horror. "They're building a weapon that can identify and eliminate specific species." "Not building," Chen corrected grimly. "Testing." The recent attacks weren't just about disrupting the Concordat. They were field trials, gathering genetic data from every major member species. "Not building," Chen corrected grimly. "Testing." The recent attacks weren't just about disrupting the Concordat. They were field trials, gathering genetic data from every major member species. The intelligence they'd recovered from the Nebula Station had revealed a plan more insidious than anyone imagined. The Separatists weren't trying to destroy the Concordat. They were trying to reshape it, one species at a time. "The weapon is nearly operational," Kivol reported, their crystalline form dark with concern. "Based on these specifications, they could theoretically eliminate an entire species from a target system while leaving all infrastructure intact." Theoretical genocide. Ambassador Kaleth's gelatinous form roiled with distress. "But our defensive systems won't help," Chen interrupted. "The delivery mechanism is based on primitive viral distribution methods. No quantum fields or neural interfaces to detect. They're using our own technological blind spots against us." The war room erupted in argument. Some leaders demanded immediate evacuation of threatened systems. Others insisted on deploying the Concordat's most advanced defensive technologies. None seemed to notice they were playing directly into the Separatists' hands. Silence. Vaxtra's command cut through the chaos. "Commander Chen, you've demonstrated an unusual aptitude for turning primitive solutions into tactical advantages. What do you suggest?" Chen studied the holographic data, her mind racing through possibilities. "The Separatists are expecting us to either abandon our systems or fortify them with advanced technology. Either way they win. But they're not expecting us to think like humans facing an overwhelming threat." "Meaning?" Kaleth prompted. "Meaning we stop trying to defend against their weapon and start thinking about how to make it irrelevant." Chen manipulated the holographic display, highlighting key details. "Look at their delivery system. It's designed to work without advanced tech because they assumed that would make it undetectable. But that also makes it vulnerable to equally primitive countermeasures." Her strike team, gathered at the back of the war room, caught on immediately. "Like introducing competing viral strains," Pulse suggested, "their energy form brightening." "Or environmental disruption," Echo added. "Simple atmospheric alterations. Basic biological countermeasures," Canyon rumbled. "The kind humans developed before they had quantum technology." Chen nodded. "Exactly. But we can go further. The Separatists designed their weapon to target specific genetic markers. What if we could temporarily mask those markers?" "Impossible," one of the Concordat scientists objected. "The genetic structure of each species is fundamental. It cannot be disguised." "Can't it?" Chen challenged. "Humans developed crude genetic treatments centuries before we achieved spaceflight. Combine that with your advanced biotechnology, and we might have a solution they'll never expect." The plan that emerged was quintessentially human, adaptable, unconventional, and just crazy enough to work. While the Separatists expected the Concordat to rely on advanced defensive technology, Chen's team would deploy a simpler solution: a genetic smokescreen. She explained to her team as they prepared for deployment. "Temporary genetic therapy combined with environmental disruption. We're not stopping their weapon. We're making everyone look like the wrong target." It's insane, Vex noted, their crystalline form flickering with what might have been excitement. Using medical techniques from humanity's past combined with our current biotechnology, the Separatists would never consider such a primitive solution. That's why it will work, Cavall added. They're expecting quantum shields and neural countermeasures, not vaccines and atmospheric scramblers. The mission to deploy their countermeasures would push both human ingenuity and alien adaptation to their limits. Each team member would need to combine their unique abilities with human tactical flexibility in ways they'd never attempted. The energy twins, Pulse and Echo, learned to manipulate basic electrical fields to disrupt the weapon's viral delivery system. Canyon's silicon-based biology provided insights into how to alter atmospheric composition without advanced technology. Vex's crystalline structure proved perfect for distributing the genetic masking agents. Remember, Chen briefed them as their ships prepared to launch. The Separatists think they've planned for every advanced countermeasure. They haven't planned for humanity's entire medical history combined with Concordat biotechnology. A primitive solution to an advanced problem, Cavall mused. It's becoming something of a pattern with you humans. Sometimes the old ways work best, Chen replied, especially when your enemy thinks they're obsolete. As their ships moved into position around the first target system, Chen couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Separatists had built their weapon assuming the Concordat's advanced technology was its greatest weakness. Instead, they were about to learn that the true strength of the Alliance lay in its ability to combine the old with the new, the primitive with the advanced. All teams, execute, she ordered. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate both human ingenuity and alien adaptation. The deployment was unlike anything the Concordat had ever attempted. While their most advanced warships maintained a visible defensive screen, Chen's teams worked in the background, releasing their countermeasures through a combination of primitive delivery systems and advanced biotechnology. Multiple Separatist ships detected, Canyon reported. They're launching their weapon platforms. Let them, Chen commanded. Sometimes the best defense is letting your enemy think they've won. The Separatist weapon activated exactly as planned, spreading through the target system like an invisible tide. But instead of finding clearly defined genetic targets, it encountered a population whose markers had been temporarily scrambled beyond recognition. It's working, Cavall reported, monitoring the results. The weapon can't lock onto any specific species. The genetic smokescreen is confusing its targeting systems, and the atmospheric disruption is degrading its viral delivery mechanism, Pulse added. They never considered we might use environmental manipulation instead of energy shields. The Separatists' perfect weapon, designed to exploit the gap between primitive and advanced technology, was being defeated by a solution that bridged that very gap. As their weapon platforms fell silent, Chen could almost imagine their confusion. All teams report success, Cavall announced. The weapon is neutralized. Though I must admit, using modified versions of ancient human vaccines as part of our defense, it's not something our tactical computers would have ever suggested. That's because computers think in terms of optimization, Chen explained. Humans think in terms of survival. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced, it's the one that works. As they watched the Separatist ships retreat, Chen reflected on how far they'd come. The Concordat had learned to value human adaptability, while her alien teammates had learned to combine their advanced capabilities with more primitive but proven methods. Commander, Canyon rumbled thoughtfully, do you think the Separatists will try again, with a different weapon? Probably, Chen admitted. But next time, they'll have to wonder whether we'll fight them with quantum fields or stone axes, or both. The victory marked more than just the defeat of a superweapon. It represented a fundamental shift in how the Concordat approached problems. Sometimes the best path forward required a step back, and the most advanced solution wasn't always the most effective one. As her team began coordinating the cleanup efforts, Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Separatists had tried to exploit what they saw as the Concordat's weakness, its mixing of advanced and primitive species. Instead, they'd helped prove that this very combination was its greatest strength. Evolution's edge. The Separatist flagship hung in the void like a wounded predator, its quantum drives flickering erratically. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Concordat vessel Adaptation as her unlikely fleet took up attack positions. The final confrontation had come, but not in the way anyone had expected. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Cavol reported, their crystalline form resonating with the incoming transmission. Audio only. No quantum encryption. Put it through, Chen ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was familiar. The Separatist leader they'd captured in the Nebula Station. Commander Chen, they clicked, I believe you'll want to hear this before you destroy us. We've discovered something. Something that changes everything. More weapons? Chen asked, though something in the Separatist's tone made her pause. Another attempt to reshape the Concordat. No. Evidence of why your species' primitive adaptability might be exactly what this galaxy needs. A data burst followed, simple binary code rather than quantum packets. See for yourself. The information displayed across the adaptation screens was staggering. Long-range scans, astronomical data, and decoded signals all pointing to one impossible conclusion. Something was coming from intergalactic space. Something that defied both primitive and advanced understanding. They're called the Void Dancers, the Separatist leader explained. A species so advanced they've transcended normal spacetime. We detected them months ago, but our quantum sensors couldn't make sense of the data. It took primitive radio astronomy to understand what we were seeing. Chen studied the readings, her tactical mind racing. That's why you were testing weapons that combined old and new technology. You were preparing for them. Yes, but we were wrong about how to fight them. Your defeat of our genetic weapon proved that. The Void Dancers aren't just advanced, they're beyond advanced. Traditional technology means nothing to them, but primitive methods might. Cavol interjected, their crystalline form brightening with understanding. Combined with our advanced capabilities, the implications rippled through the bridge crew. The Separatists hadn't been trying to tear the Concordat apart. They'd been trying to force it to evolve, to become something that could face what was coming. They'd just chosen the wrong approach. Show them, Chen ordered. Show them what we've learned about combining the old and the new. The demonstration that followed would have been impossible months ago. Energy beings wielding primitive electrical principles through advanced quantum matrices. Crystalline forms using ancient optical techniques amplified by modern technology. Silicon entities combining basic geology with quantum physics. And humans bridging it all together with their unique gift for adaptation. Your species, the Separatist leader observed, treats every limitation as a potential advantage, every primitive solution as a foundation for advancement. We thought this made you weak. Now we understand it makes you essential. Not just us, Chen corrected. Every species brings something unique. The key isn't abandoning advancement for primitive methods or primitive methods for advancement. It's understanding when and how to use both. The alliance that formed in those next hours would reshape the galaxy. The Separatists, with their research into the Void Dancers. The Concordat, with its diverse species and advanced technology. And humanity, with its endless capacity to adapt and innovate. We'll need new training protocols, Canyon rumbled, their silicon form vibrating with possibilities. Ways to combine every species' natural abilities with both primitive and advanced techniques. And new technology, Pulse added, while Echo finished, designed to work with primitive principles rather than replace them. We'll need everything, Chen agreed, because we're not just facing a new enemy. We're facing the next step in our evolution as a civilization. The preparations began immediately. The Concordat's advanced shipyards started producing vessels that incorporated both quantum drives and simple mechanical backups. Training facilities merged neural combat programs with basic physical conditioning. Research stations studied how primitive methods could enhance rather than compete with advanced technology. You know, Caval observed, watching the combined fleet begin joint maneuvers. When you first arrived at the Concordat, we thought we were accepting a primitive species out of treaty obligations. And now, Chen asked, though she could guess the answer. Now we understand that the combination of primitive and advanced, of old and new, isn't a weakness to be overcome. It's an advantage to be embraced. The Void Dancers evolved beyond normal spacetime, but in doing so, they might have evolved past the ability to adapt. And adaptation, Chen finished, is what humanity does best. As the combined fleet prepared for what was coming, Chen reflected on how far they'd all come. The Concordat had learned that advancement didn't mean abandoning proven methods. The Separatists had learned that evolution meant building on the past, not erasing it. And humanity had found its place in the galaxy not despite its primitive beginnings, but because of them. All ships begin integration protocols, she ordered. Let's show the universe what happens when you combine the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. The Void Dancers were coming, bringing challenges beyond imagination. But they would face a galaxy that had learned to embrace both its primitive roots and its advanced potential. A civilization that understood that true evolution meant keeping what worked while reaching for what was possible. And at the heart of it all, serving as the bridge between old and new, primitive and advanced, past and future, humanity would do what it had always done best: adapt, improvise, and overcome. Ready formation, Chen commanded, watching her diverse crew work in perfect harmony. Let's go make some history. The fleet moved out, each ship a testament to the power of combination. In their wake, they left behind old divisions between primitive and advanced, separatist and Concordat, human and alien. Ahead lay challenges that would test every skill, every technology, and every adaptation they had learned. But they faced it together, having learned that the greatest strength wasn't in abandoning the old for the new, or clinging to the past at the expense of the future. It was in understanding that evolution itself was an act of adaptation, of taking the best of what came before and using it to face what came next. The stars beckoned, and humanity led the way, not because they were the most advanced, but because they had never forgotten how to be primitive when necessary. In the end, that might make all the difference.